All right. Oh, let me make sure the right mic is being used. I do not believe it is. Rip to anybody who's listening with headphones. All right. All right. What's up, everybody? Haven't done one of these in a hot minute. Um, but the class that I was teaching wrapped up, and so now we can do this again. Let me look because I think. Oh, why is that not? It's literally the whole reason why. All right, 1 second. We're having technical difficulties. Okay, cool. We are not having technical difficulties. All right. All right, everybody. So we are going to give this a minute and talk the psychology of Superman, specifically Superman 2025. There is a brand new Superman movie out, and man, I had a lot of feelings about that. But as we are kicking off, do me a favor. As you are jumping in, find your way to the comment section and say what's up. Let me know where you are tuning in from. If you are on Twitch and you shout out where you're watching from Twitch, you will be in the running for a gift certificate for a discount code for our merch store over at kfmbroadcasting.com. Andrew, if you're watching, surprise. But that's only for Twitch folks. So if you are not a part of Twitch, you can either head over to twitch.tv/buddywalkpod/KFM Broadcasting or the newly minted /Thoughts from a Bearded Geek, which is brand new as of this afternoon. So this is going to be a bit of a crossover. If you are unaware, I also have a hey, what's up? Glad you are with us. So if you guys are unaware, I also have a nerd culture, geek culture YouTube channel called Thoughts from a Bearded Geek. I've been putting out a series of videos as of late, the philosophy of, and I've talked about Golden Age Superman. I've talked about Star Wars, and we talk about everything over there. It is very much the home for all of the IPs and stuff that I love. And I, being not only a giant comic book fan, but also a specifically giant DC fan, went to go see the new Superman movie. I'm one of those guys that went to go see it in IMAX, which was phenomenal. So I want to say, as we get going, as we jump off to the races here, that spoilers are going to be ahead. We're going to talk about some of the character beats of the new Superman, some of the philosophy of, we're hitting a little bit of everything, but I am not going to be holding back from I'm not going to be holding back from any of these spoilers. Okay, seriously. It was phenomenal in IMAX. Like the fact that I I wasn't gonna go see it in IMAX initially. I was like, yeah, you know what? Let me catch a showing. Let me catch a morning show. It's when it fit into my schedule. And I go on the gimmick for the theater that I was gonna go to, and yeah, no, we're not doing any of the non spoiler stuff. Like strap in, get to it, let's do it. So I go into the gimmick, and I see that they're showing it now. The theater by me only has like one or two screens for IMAX, so it's always like super hit and miss as to whether or not what you want to see in IMAX is actually showing in IMAX. And I saw that Superman was going to be in IMAX, and I'm like, this is. And if you go over to the Thoughts from a Bearded Geek channel, like I was talking about, I've been putting out Superman content for a minute, but when I first got the or when I first saw the trailer for Superman when it first dropped, and I saw the first looks at what James Gunn was doing with the Big Blue Boy Scout. Immediately, I made a video talking about how this very well could be the Superman that we need. Now, there's if there's room on the table, like I'm one of those guys that I look at comic book movies like I look at pizza. Bad pizza is better than no pizza at all. I am pretty forgiving, and I try to be pretty positive about the different comic book movies that come out, and try to find something at least redeemable. So if like the dark and broody, Superman smoking cigarettes, listening to The Cure is your bag, like cool, no problem. You're not going to hear any guff out of me. But like that's not like Superman. Like that's not like that's not Superman. And so um to me, in James Gunn we trust sort of thing. Like I understand it got to be kind of in vogue to badmouth James Gunn and the work that he's been doing and all of that sort of stuff. But like if there's anybody that could put out the kind of Superman movie that defines a generation, it's him. And then knowing that he is a huge, huge animal rescue advocate, knowing that he was going to be focusing on crypto, I'm like, oh, shut up and take my money. And like I said, I saw it was in IMAX, and I'm like, all right, fine. Like let's do it. Like you might as well do it. You only get to see a new Superman, and I'll share this because why not have a hot take. I never got Henry Cavill. I never did. Like he's fine, square jawed, big dude. Like I get it. Like that part of it, I understand. And maybe it's just because of Man of Steel and BVS and all of that sort of stuff that part of me is like I'm not really resonating with this Superman, so I have a hard time resonating with the actor playing him. But I've seen him in other things, and I'm still just kind of like, okay, you know what I mean? Like I, other than being like a square jawed all American type, I'm not so sure that I thought he had the personality or the likability to be Soups. And I had never heard of David Cornsweet before this one, and I thought he did an amazing job. And not for nothing, I think Nicholas Hoult did a phenomenal job as Lex. Up to this point, Lex Luthor had always been done better on the small screen. Clancy Brown, Michael Rosenbaum, John Cryer, take your pick. Lex has always done better on the small screen. Nicholas Hoult is exactly what Lex needed to be for a Superman that was only 3 years into his time as the Big Blue Boy Scout. Um, because you figure if you're going proportionately with how experienced Superman is and how experienced Lex is, not that there's a definitive one for one correlation, but you kind of keep it reasonable in a lot of regards, so that way you can grow. Then Lex already shows that character motivation that is present in the character that needs to be there. Like he's already showing the fact that he has a giant inferiority complex. He already has all of the ego and all of this stuff and intelligence, but he's inexperienced. He has room to grow. He's not President Lex Luthor yet, but he played it in a way and it was presented in a way where he can then turn around and become, when the time comes, a Justice League level villain. I think he can grow along with the role, and Nicholas Hoult is doing a good enough job that he can start to tweak the character as it goes, keeping the core foundation of what he did in place, but adding to the gravitas of the character and adding these different character attributes to Lex Luthor to become this big bad that he really can be, especially if we get some of the stuff that I'm hoping that we get as, we start to develop each individual story and as we start to flush out the world as a whole to the point where we get the Justice League. My not after having seen Superman, my hope is I could see, if we're taking the standard treatment in the way of like three arcs to the overall story. The two things that I do not want them to touch unless it's in like a post credit scene in the first Justice League movie on down the line, like let him cook. But I do not want to see at all Crisis on Infinite Earths. I do not think that Crisis on Infinite Earths is a good fit for the movie universe. I love that we set up a movie universe where like we got kaiju, we got interdimensional imps, we got all manner of nonsense going on. That I absolutely love. But the I don't I think it's too big, and I don't think you have the time in 2 to 3 hour long movies to tell enough stories without burning people out that Crisis is as impactful as it absolutely can be, because Crisis was meant in the 80s to wipe the board of 50 years at that point in time of continuity and just kind of brushing over a fresh coat of paint on the continuity when they needed something to change. That's why you have the golden age and the silver age, and generally accepted the end of the silver age is Crisis, and then you have the post crisis continuity and all of that. I don't want them to touch that, because unless you're trying to hard reboot the entirety of the universe, uh no, like you're not you're there's no real way to tell that story in a way that's super compelling. I would say the closest that they came to that was, yes, the Arrowverse. I think the Arrowverse did an amazing job with Crisis, especially considering they didn't have much in the way of the big name people. They had Superman ish, but not like to the point where he was like a focal point. So you did a lot of that heavy lifting through Flash, who is a major character, but not to the level of the Trinity, as far as um, within the story. And so I just don't think that that's the right beat for it. So my hope is, if we're going with the 3 act structure first Justice League movie, if we get 3 Justice League movies, the first Justice League movie that I want to see is Lex comes back and he teams up with Brainiac. It's the end of the Gods and Monsters arc, and what better monster than the Techno Monster himself with Brainiac. Brainiac comes back. That's an age old companionship in the comics. Phenomenal. And that's where you get more of the intelligent, learning more developed Lex, and you can have him show up randomly in other people's stories along the way as well. But I think I think that would be a great first, and you keep it central to Superman's mythos, since Superman is kind of like your temple of this universe. Um, the second one, I would love Lex gathering the League of Supervillains. I would absolutely love seeing Lex almost do like a pseudo twist on the Nick Fury Avengers initiative. So you get all of these individual stories from across the DC universe, because James Gunn has said each one of these stories are going to be stories unto themselves that set within a larger context. And I think that's exactly what that needs to be, because eventually Marvel became the Avengers. It became everything was about the Avengers, everything serving the greater whole. We're not telling individual stories anymore. I think you do exactly not that. And you actually give time to tell great standalone stories, and you're on to something special. But if you do that, then you have room for villains. And there are some killer villains on the DC side. I mean, I'm just chomping at the bit for a good live action Eobard Thawne. Reverse Flash, like, yes, Flash is my guy, like top of the heap as far as DC goes. I'm a Barry Allen Flash guy, and I would love to see Reverse Flash in live action. But you gather all of the supervillains, and that could be number two, and then number three. That's when you finally get Darkseid. I don't think we need to touch Darkseid. He's a Thanos level villain, and I think you can build up the mystique in post credit scenes without actually going into having him on screen before like the end of the road, because then you can do, if you want to go, like if you want to mirror the structure that was set forward by Marvel and have like that two-part epic, then that first part of that epic could be the heroes lose, and then the second part of it is they figure out how to come back, a la final hour, zero hour, final crisis. I don't remember which one. There's one that kind of is what the loose premise of that crisis. For those of you that don't know, DC has had a dozen different crises over the years. But yeah, those are some of my loose hopes. But yeah, dude, this movie was everything that I wanted it to be, um including the relationships around Superman that help showcase who Superman is in this universe, because Superman in this universe is not the first meta. In the first like 30 seconds we get that established. He's not the first hero. He's only in it for 3 years, but you don't need to have him be the first in order to be the paragon of hope that he is. And the whole time as I'm watching this movie, I'm thinking Superman versus the Elite, hardcore vibes. Superman versus the Elite. Same. I'm also getting hardcore Golden Age Superman vibes, where Superman is not perfect. He is not the I can do anything character that he would become in the Silver Age. But he is somebody who stands for human dignity and worth. He is somebody who stands for the rights of all humanity and the unity of the carbon based life form, people who are inherently together in this thing called life as humans. And a lot of times that means he's coming up against people like dictators, people like warlords, people like criminals, people like slumlords, people like rotten politicians, people like that. And while not all of those were present the in the movie, just the vibe of him and the way that they had him portrayed, I think, really harkened on classic humanitarian Superman. And I love that about him because, like him or not, and I used to be one of those guys that was like, Superman is easy because it's easy to be a hero when you've got the powers of a god. But to think like that fundamentally misunderstands good Superman writing. There is some Superman writing that just, what do we need him to do? He is walking plot armor, like he is walking MacGuffin, and so like let's just have him do whatever needs doing, and then that'll solve any kind of qualms that we've run ourselves into. But when done right, he is a living, breathing heartbeat of humanity. He is an intrinsic link to the human condition. And that part I love. That part I think is done nigh to perfection with this movie. And he gives this inspiring speech after having gone through all of this stuff and having to be reminded by Jonathan Kent, by Ma and Pa, about how the choices that you make define who you are. And he gives this speech about what it means to be a human, what it means to be a person. And that was everything, every single solitary thing that it needed to be. And James Gunn is a guy who gets the psychology of Superman. The psychology and philosophy of Superman is one of moral absolutism, where he is fully confident in his moral compass. And he needs to be reminded in the middle of the movie, but along the way, he is confident in his moral compass of what is right and wrong. Also, shout out to Jonathan Kent for actually surviving a Superman movie. Phenomenal. I did not think that need. I don't. Okay, so I don't think we need the 87th time of pearls and popcorn. Seriously, when they do Batman, they need to ignore Crime Alley. They need to ignore pearls and popcorn. It's already been done, and it's probably been done better than whoever's going to do it. So just don't do it. We're already off to the races. We don't need an origin story. And this movie was on a 12 pack of Red Bull. Like, this movie was from go, not letting up, all gas, no break. Like, you are in it for 2-ish hours, and it's telling a lot of story inside of 2-ish hours. I don't hate it though. I don't, because I think if you add the filler to slow down the pacing, if you add the filler to ratchet it back and have it be like 2.5 hours, then it drags. I think if you're going for comic book brought to the big screen, and this movie, do not make a single mistake about it, is a comic book on the big screen, you need it to be punchy. You need it to be quick. You need it to be nigh frenetic. Because inside of, I don't know, I looked at my watch, and within like 5 minutes, we had Soups, we had how long he was around for. We had Crypto, we had the Fortress, we had his birth parents, we had the automatons in the Fortress, we had the Hammer of Baravia, we had all of these different pieces. And the thing about the movie is, if that's your bag, if you dig it, then awesome. Then you're gonna love this movie. If this is 100% the movie that you're looking for. If you can't accept that world that James Gunn has set up, or you're not into a Superman that is more classical in nature, more hope inspiring in nature, um, that is then this movie's going to be a tough sell. This movie's going to be kind of a hard watch to get through. And I think when I look at something like this, I think one of the things that I appreciate the most about this movie is that it's unapologetically inspiring. Somewhere along the way, it became cool to root for the anti-hero. And there are some anti-heroes that are like, okay, classical anti-heroes can be fun, and they can be well used and well done in the right circumstances, in the right situations. But generally, that's that tends to um that tends to supersede. If you're going to do that, then that means that you likely are not going to get a classical hero, because they're trying to sell you on the anti-hero. And I'm all for, I've been accused at certain parts of my life of being cynical, and I don't know, maybe sometimes I am, but I think it's okay to have cynical other characters. I think it's okay to have a cynical Batman. I think it's okay to have a cynical Green Lantern. Which, by the way, Guy Gardner, Nathan Fillion, hello. Like, I understand that some people had a really big problem with his hairstyle and all of that sort of jazz, but like, again, comic book brought to life. Comic book brought to life. That was so well done and brilliantly acted. Mr. Terrific, come on, he stole the show. Like, the guy was just so good. The scenes with him and Crypto, he's like, it's him and a flying dog and a squid man. Like, it was just, yeah, it was. I mean, we had kaiju and we had giant starfish. Like, let's just be real, and that those are the beats that I think it's okay to have fantasy, man. Like, I think in our stories, it's okay to have a little bit of wonder. I think it's okay to have a little bit of joy. And I think it's okay to have a little bit of optimism. And I dug the story that they told. He was brought to Earth with the express idea of conquer them, conquer the humans, conquer and rule over them, because you will be stronger and you can show them the way, which is not new. I don't understand why some people are getting all up in arms about that. I don't understand. Because that has been done multiple times in the comics. But it's displaying the fact that he has a choice. It's displaying the fact that he he thought he was being sent to Earth with the idea of live among them, protect them, that sort of thing. And yeah, he does have a bit of an identity crisis when he realizes that his parents sent him here to essentially be a dictator rather than being Superman. But that he didn't have the end of the recording. He assumed what the rest of it said and chose to live by a certain set of ideals. And that says more about character integrity than just having him be, oh, that's just how he is because that's just how he is. That's how he is because that's how he was told to be. No, you're making it so that way he actually had to have the agency to make those choices for himself. And I think that's one of the most brilliant components of the entire story, because this is a guy who had the power to bust out backwards and to be the greatest threat that the world ever knew. But instead, chose to care for humanity, chose to be kind, chose to go against the grain. And I think I really do think that it was the message that was needed when you look at this whole idea of kindness is punk rock. Because at one point in time, somebody like Lois would have 100% been considered punk rock, question everything, anti establishment, rage against the machine. Yeah, all of those things are at different points in human history considered to be the alternative against the mainstream. But I mean, look around. Look at the world around us. The mainstream has become cynicism. And I'm not saying that in a lot of ways it shouldn't be. We live in a world of deepfakes. We live in a world of we live in a country where you cannot trust the government. We live in a society where it the accuracy of your statements doesn't matter nearly as much as how loud you say them or how much influence you have on social media. Which, by the way, the monkeys on Twitter, I thought was phenomenal. I thought that was so funny. But there's a reason why cynicism has become what it has become. But the problem with cynicism in questioning is that you don't really get to have a lot of kindness, like a lot of trust in that. And that's why I love the fact that Lois knows who Clark is. And I because I think that speaks to his trusting nature. It speaks to the fact that he is head over heels for Lois and just trusts her and doesn't hold it back. I don't think we need an entire movie where the B plot is when is Lois and how is Lois going to find out that there is who he is. Um, I don't think we need to. I think that would have drug down literally everything to do that, and would go against what James Gunn is establishing. And I think when you look at everything that we have with this character, everything that we have with the nature of Superman, the nature of who Superman is and what makes him tick and all of that sort of stuff. I just think, man, this is exactly the Superman that the world the world needed, because we live in a time where things seem really weird. You know what I mean? Like, I've heard a lot, as a pastor, I have heard a lot of discourse over the last stretch of time, um, about, is this the end of the world? Are we living in the last days? Are we living all this stuff with everything that's going on? A lot of end times chatter. While I'm not that person, I do not think that. I do not think that we are. I do not think that this is the end of the world, and I honestly don't even read the end of scripture like that. Um, I will say that it feels weird. It feels like we are living in a weird time, and it feels like we are living in a time where kindness has become the foreign the foreign concept, and it becomes more en vogue to operate based off of what you're against, rather than the unity of coming together under the idea of what brings you together, what unifies you, what are you for, what do you stand together on. And man, I just think that that's an at an inherently human level, at an inherently person level, that is the story that we need to hear. Just like, regardless of whether or not you like another person, or you agree with another person, or another person is standing against you, recognizing the inherent worth, value, and dignity of another person feels like it goes hard against the grain, because there's a million qualifiers that go on to that statement. There's a million qualifiers that go on to whether or not a person is worth dignity, depending on where they're from, depending on how much money they have, depending on what how they dress, or what color their skin is, or what they worship, or whatever the case may be. It's become this state of being that is more focused on looking for a reason to disengage with somebody, rather than coming together and saying, we are all human, and because of that very fact, we are going to put forward the things that are more important, and we are going to recognize the togetherness of humanity. I think learning that lesson at a human level is vital. I think learning that lesson as a race of humanity is exactly what is needed. Because, friends, as much as it becomes, for as much as it becomes easy to pursue one stance over another stance, or prioritize one opinion as the truth, or feel like you need to have the righteous moral high ground, or any of those kinds of things, the thing that will, above all else, change this world is love, is compassion. And man, that's Superman. And I know for some people, you look at Superman and you see truth, justice, in the American way. He hasn't been truth, justice, in the American way in a long time. He's been truth and justice the entire time. And I think there's something to prioritizing a figure that stands as a the ultimate immigrant story, the ultimate disenfranchised story, this champion of the oppressed. There are so many levels to this. Watching this as a Christian and looking at the world around us, it is unfortunate that that mode of being, that way of life, seems rare at this point, seems unique at this point, seems like we all collectively need to be reminded of that in today's moment in history. Um, and I just think when we look at what it means to care for other people, we have to realize that there is no half measure. There is no half measure when it comes to actually loving on somebody, not holding back love based off of our own criteria, not holding back love based off of our own parameters, but leaning into the full extent of what it means to care for another person, to love another person, to show compassion for another person. And it asks the question, if you have the power to do so, what does that mean? If you have the power to do so, will you act? Will you do something? And I think that's a hard question to ask. But the thing about tough questions is they tend to bring out sharp answers. And that's what I think this movie does really well. Is it allows for the room to ask sharp to ask tough questions, but gives the opportunity to be able to respond with sharp answers because it displays a better path. It displays a path forward. And for anybody who may be wondering why I'm drawing any kind of religious comparison between Superman and like Christianity or religion or whatever the case may be, in case you did not know, Superman was created by two Jewish American first generation Americans, yes, from New York, and they he was created as a Moses figure. As much as Zack Snyder really wanted to make Jesus allegories, he's not a Jesus figure. He's a Moses figure. And he was designed to be a champion of the oppressed. He was designed to be somebody who could stand up for the little guy and be able to step in for the person who could not defend themselves. And that's exactly why I thought that moment where they showed the people rallying behind the S and all of that sort of stuff was so well done. I thought that was a beautiful scene because the truth is, you know, we as Christians, we look at what do we rally behind and all of that sort of stuff, and we can get nitpicky and all of that sort of stuff. But I do still think that even outside of the big name things that we like the God that we worship, when you say, okay, what though can remind us of basic human dignity? What else can remind us of as a paragon of virtue? That's where we can look to the things that we enjoy taking in: movies, music, TV shows, comics, geek culture, different things like that. We can find the deeper meanings in every single one of those things. And we can celebrate those things because that is part of the beauty of just simply enjoying something, is being able to recognize how it reflects values that we need a reminder of, that it reflects values that we inherently agree with on a deep level. And that's where I think the beauty of a movie like this comes in, because it's so it's so dripping with all of these different aspects that bring out deep psychological and philosophical notes. Superman is driven by a deep psychological need for justice, not law, and not even specifically order, but justice. His world is black and white. There are victims and there are perpetrators. There is right and there is wrong. And he is going to side with right. And to understand this, that's where we have to look at terms like moral absolutism, which is the belief that certain actions are intrinsically right or wrong, regardless of context, regardless of consequences, regardless of differences. Now, some people argue of whether or not that's the right stance to have and all of that sort of stuff, but when you look at a Superman that is pointed to what is right and what is wrong, then you have somebody that, unlike Batman, isn't reacting to personal trauma. He isn't driven by vengeance. His psyche isn't scarred, it's resolute. And he believes in change through force when necessary, driven by his confidence in his own moral compass, which is unshakable. He's driven by compassion, and compassion is right. And so when you look at the larger landscape of the DC universe and the movies that are going to be coming out and all of that sort of stuff, I had mentioned before that I get hardcore Superman versus the Elite vibes, because you look at the Justice Gang, and the Justice Gang don't really have a regard for the safety of the bystanders. They really are just willing to do whatever it takes. And Superman is trying to stop other people from getting hurt along the way. And I think that is a wonderful picture into the type of person that Superman is, the type of character that Superman is. And I think one of the hardest things about Superman is acts as a he acts as a mirror in a way that few other characters act as a mirror. There's a thought experiment called Should Superman Save a Cat from a Tree? And it's supposed to show you how you view life and how you view the importance of different things. And the thing about Superman is, obviously he's a character. He's written by the people who are writing him. He's not inherently a person. So if you are looking at a Superman that shouldn't save a cat from a tree, then you are saying that that's a Superman where those things are beneath him. And he shouldn't waste his time helping those people. You see what I mean? it becomes problematic to say things like that. And it's a showcase and it gets uncomfortable. It does. It gets hard. But that's the beauty of exploring how you process the world around you by proxy through characters, by allowing yourself to get caught up in that world and allowing yourself to ask big questions through the lens of these characters. That if you had the power of Superman, would you act? If you had the power to stop somebody completely and totally, would you do so? And I think that's there I think there's a lot of power in authentically asking exactly those big questions. And I love that we got a chance to see all of the characters that we got a chance to see, and how Soups acts as this figurehead displaying this way of being for people that also have powers, but and have been presumably operating longer than he has, but don't have that value for humanity. And that's what I think makes me so excited about this. It's the Superman that we needed. It's a Superman that for a new generation. It is a Superman that will just flat out instill hope. And you know what? Yeah, sure. There's a world where we look to the one true sense of hope that doesn't change and all of those things, and that's all good. That's all gravy. But being reminded of it through the lens of the things that we enjoy consuming is also a good thing. I know that there are some people who saw the movie or and thought, oh, that's woke. Oh, they went woke and all of that sort of stuff. And to anybody who struggles with the idea that this Superman story is woke, the only thing I'm going to tell you is that literally he was made to be a champion of the oppressed. Literally, Superman has always had politics in his stories, and literally he is, even though he may display some aspects of conservative nature and all of that sort of stuff, that's not what people are up in arms about. It's the stuff that people are calling woke, that's showcasing the value of every single solitary human being. And that is something that I do think we need to champion. I do think that that's exactly the right mode of being. So so yeah, those are my thoughts. Go see the movie if you haven't. Crypto is amazing. I think that the way that they did Crypto was absolutely stunning. I think the humanity, even in the relationship between those two, was so good. But I love looking at the deeper notes of of these different characters and analyzing this Superman. Yes, is he a Superman that is messy because he's only 3 years in? Absolutely, but he still shows the heartbeat of what makes a hero. He still shows the heartbeat of what makes him him. And he still shows the core fundamentals of what it means to care for people and value people, right and wrong, first and foremost, before caring about a political quandary or any of those kinds of things. And that's what I think was so good about the interview between him and Lois is he openly states people were going to die, and so he acted. And I think that's a wonderful picture of who Superman is. So chime in. Let me know what where y'all are what y'all thought of the movie for those of you that saw it. I will. There are a couple of Twitch accounts that are tied to this stream. We did have a couple of people chime in. I will give one last little shout out for anybody who is watching on Twitch. Um, Go ahead and drop a comment and you will be in the running for a discount code for our merch shop over at kfmbroadcasting.com. I want to hear from you, and if you're not a part of their and you're on wherever else you're on from, thank you, but we are trying very hard to move over to to Twitch as much as we can. We have. Are you looking forward to Supergirl? Um, yes. In the same way. So I said. So I said at the beginning that I view it like pizza. Even bad pizza is better than no pizza. I am not very well versed in Supergirl. I don't know a lot of her story. I've watched some of the TV show, but I'm not like chomping at the bit in the same way that I was about Superman. But if it's a good story, then yeah, let's do it. Giddy up. I do think that it would be. I think it's an interesting twist the way that they portrayed Supergirl in the post credit scene. I think it's an interesting twist. I'm not sure I've ever heard of a version of Supergirl that was like a partier and all of that sort of stuff. Maybe there is, and I just don't know about it. But there are a couple of bigger Supergirl stories that I have heard of that if you're going to go for inspiration, I would love to see done in live action. Especially when like Off on Her Own and her connecting with humanity, but in a different way because she's not nearly as lighthearted and not nearly as pure as Superman is, and all of that sort of stuff. I do think that having a Kryptonian that isn't as true blue as Superman is it could make for some really really cool storytelling. I will say I am so incredibly thankful that kind of like what I said about Jonathan Kent surviving a Superman movie. I am thrilled that we did not get General Zod I okay, so I view General Zod in the same way that I view the Joker. I can appreciate how they've been done. I can appreciate the characters that they are. I can appreciate what they stand for and why they are as meaningful to fans as they are. But come on, if we haven't even had a live action Brainiac, then we don't need the 87th live action Zod. Same, or any of the Kryptonians. We don't need Superman but bad. There are a million other stories to tell other than here's all the same powers, but just what if he has to face somebody who's evil? Sort of thing. Like, I just think there's more compelling stories to tell than that. But to get back to your actual question, am I looking forward to it in the sense of in James Gunn we trust? Yeah. Um, I think at this point, I don't think I would want anybody else helming the Kryptonian part of the story other than James Gunn. I think I pretty solidly want to see James Gunn take care of that entire corner of the universe. One more prediction that, or I guess wish list, if I'm looking at stories that I want to see adapted. So I am one of the people that I fundamentally want to see Robert Pattinson as I was literally I thought that, oh, dude, Alan Tudyk Alan Tudyk as Brainiac, yes, please, with the double scoop. That would be phenomenal if that was the back door, and if that's how Brainiac gets in is through Alan Tudyk's robot, and like the robot becomes corrupted and becomes like the vessel for Brainiac, and it's the whole time being acted by Alan Tudyk. Yes, I think that would be peak nerd. That would be wonderful. He is such an underrated. Like geeks know, like geek culture knows, especially Firefly fans, like we know who Alan Tudyk is and just how impactful that dude really is. But outside of geek culture, I just feel like he is like painfully unknown, like painfully sold short on just how awesome he is as not just even like his voice acting is phenomenal. His physical acting is phenomenal. All around, absolutely um, phenomenal. So, but yes, I think between Brainiac, um, I think there's more that you could do with Ultraman, especially if you full blown make him Bizarro. I think that's another one that could make for a really cool story. I so uh, I also don't think we need to touch Doomsday. I will say I don't think we need Doomsday. I think we need to stay away from the death of Superman because this whole thing literally started. Um, thanks, thanks. I'm glad that you are enjoying yourself. Um, yeah, I don't want to see Doomsday because I want to see them thrive. And if they are going to do Death of Superman, which I don't think they should even do Death of Superman, like full tilt, I just don't think that's honestly all that compelling of a story, me personally. Namely because they literally brought him back like almost immediately. And unless you're gonna backdoor in Reign of the Supermen, and I'm not gonna lie, I think the Venn diagram of the general public and geeks that are gonna appreciate that story enough to watch it, uh I don't know. Like I just don't I don't know as though it's there. So I think there are more than enough other stories. So here's a poll for you. We're talking about Superman villains that we want to see in the movie. Here's a poll. The Black Mercy Plan. I you get even if it's a tool used by Lex or by the Legion of Supervillains, or somebody, even if somebody uses the plant on him, getting that parasite plant on him is, I think, would be a really, I think it would be a really cool look and relatively easy to do like this is what he would have always wanted. This is the perfect life, all of that sort of stuff. And you can kind of stimulate some character drama in there while telling a kind of low to the ground story in a way. Um we got agreed, Luther kind of needs to be around, but we need at least one movie. Brainiac, Metallo, Parasite, Zod can stay in the Phantom Zone. Yes, absolutely, Zod can stay in the Phantom Zone. Yes, Metallo, that's another one. Absolutely, like that's a very credible threat. But like, did you notice? I'm just gonna point it out that he did call that Starro looking thing. Which I'm like, really? We're just gonna get Starro? We're just gonna pull that out? We're just doing that in this universe, and I'm here for it. But he called it an interdimensional imp. Mixospitalic, anybody? Yes. We need I need a Superman versus Mixospitalic. But if we're gonna do it, we need to do it the short version. We need to do like the animated series version where like we're not trying to make him into like this is a regular looking human and he has all of the other powers but a regular looking human. Like nope, he needs to be as ridiculous as he is in the comics and in the Superman the animated show. I that would be phenomenal because it lets you get as weird as this movie started this getting. You know what I mean? The cube shapes in the portal. Ultraman is 100% coming back as Bizarro. Yes, and that's exactly it. Like, I had said to some folks that I was talking to after they watched the movie, and there was some like, oh, Ultraman is not like he's not a clone. So why are they doing that? I was like, okay, I can fix that in two. You ready? First one. He got knocked through through an interdimensional portal and ended up in a different dimension. Okay, so he went to another dimension, found his voice, went in and partnered up with evil versions of all of these other heroes. Bob's your uncle. You've got the crime syndicate, and we're back to Ultraman. And even if they don't do that, even if we don't make him like actually Ultraman, he comes back and he does the full. But if he comes back as Bizarro, I want the messed up speech pattern. I want it all. I want the full thing. Let's ham it up to the nth degree and fully make dude the Bizarro version of Superman. But that's another one where you can tell that story along the way. You can milk this thing and have 4, 5 Superman stories all within this universe, especially if you're not trying to do specifically the Marvel method, where you're building to Avengers, and then you're building to Avengers 2, and then you're building to Avengers Endgame, and then you're building towards Infinity War and the Infinity Saga and all of those kinds of things. Have a larger plan. I have no problem with a larger plan. Um, Me and the work. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so, but especially if you're more concentrated on telling stories than you are needing to shove it into the formula of only specifically big team up movies, only specifically the league, then you've got a whole the world is your oyster to be able to start pumping these things out and have them be quality, because this showed that superhero fatigue is not a thing. There's a reason why comics have been around. Like Superman is the OG of the heroic age of like what has led to like superheroes as we know them, and we're talking 1938, y'all. We're talking about a character who is sniffing at 100 years old. And yeah, there's been a lot of changes. There's been a lot of ups and downs and in betweens and peaks and valleys and all this kind of stuff. But there's a reason why comics still exist. And I don't think like it. We don't need to be worried about superhero fatigue as much as we do 17 movies, 37 TV shows, and all of this sort of stuff in order for anything to actually land. I think people want good storytelling. I think it's the same as it's always been. People want compelling characters and good storytelling. So, and James Gunn is a guy who can give it to them, who can give them these stories that are timeless. And that's where I think Superman is a character that has been done a lot in the different by different actors in different eras and resembling different things. You look at Christopher Reeve's Superman, and Christopher Reeve very much embodied the Silver Age. Whatever you need him to do, you need him to do something like, so. We're talking. Well, my point stands, but even before I said that, I wasn't even thinking about the fact that that movie would have come out solidly in the Silver Age. So it makes sense that it would reflect the Silver Age. But in that, whatever you need him to do, he can do it, sort of thing. But what did he do? He instilled hope. He made you believe that a man could fly. And that's what I was looking for out of the new Superman. Could you remind me that a man could fly? Can you show me that a human can stand up and be a paragon of virtue and hope in what feels like a dark world? And that's the beauty of it. That's just how they did it. Nothing incredibly fancy, just 2 hours and 9 minutes of a Superman comic brought to life, including Element Man. Like, Element Man? Like, are you serious? Like, what kind of pull is that? There's a million different characters that you would think would get, but it was a brilliant way to bring out Kryptonite. It was everything was done with intention. Everything was done purposefully. And that's what I think makes that movie so good. Is everything that was done with intentionality. Now, I think I would love to see Robert Pattinson's Batman juxtaposed against this Superman. I think those two doing World's Finest team up, I think, would be phenomenal. And I think we should get a Batman and Superman movie. I would love to get Batman and Superman World's Finest, would be phenomenal. But I would love to see um the Court of Owls done in this universe. Like, make Battinson the Batman of this world, and let's do Court of Owls. I think that would be awesome. Or World's Finest. Here's one: World's Finest, and the villain is like Mr. Freeze, or Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy, and there needs to be a team up, and Batman needs help because it's superpowered humans and it's metas, and it's the first time that he's ever encountered a meta. Who's my oop, almost hit the wrong button and almost blocked you. That would be a travesty because I'm loving the engagement. 1 second. There we go. All right. Who is your favorite Superman? It's David Cornsweet for me now. To be honest, every single character in the movie was the most on point ever on screen. Yes. So I agree with all of this. Um, I do think the Sinestro from the Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds was phenomenal. Um, I just think that the Green Lantern from the Green Lantern movie was garbage. Not good. But it was cool to see a Green Lantern be able to actually do what he does when in the scene in the desert where he's using constructs, and he's using construct middle fingers to hit everybody. I was dying because that's something that Guy Gardner would do. Now that we've got Guy Gardner, this all needs to lead to a scene where Batman punches Guy Gardner in the face, which just needs to happen. Like, that's just what needs to happen. If you know, you know. So, favorite Superman, I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Tyler Hoechlin. I think Tyler Hoechlin brought until David Cornsweet, I would have said he was the most personable Superman. He was the one that was the most family man. And he's a great Bronze Age Superman. Um, I think that overall, if you are looking at like the sum total of Superman and Clark, I got to give it to David. I think I'll at least say this: if we are going to separate it into big screen and small screen, then 100% David Cornsweet for the big screen and Tyler Heckling for the small screen. But I still got to edge it out for David Cornsweet because he just gives more of a nature that like Tyler Heckling was a great Superman, but his Clark left something to be desired. David does both. Um, Also, any thoughts on potential World War II Silver Age Justice Society? There was a big mural in the Hall of Justice with Wildcat, Jay Garrick, Sam Manning, etc. Yeah, so uh cool. Like if we do it, cool. Um it's not like on the top of my list, but being as big of a Flash guy as I am, I would love to get a good Jay Garrick. I think that would probably be the most compelling aspect of it for me. Um, I could see a world where World War II, they do the World War II movie, and I could see a world where they tried to bring in Wonder Woman that way and have Wonder Woman team up with them and because doing the classic portrayal of Wonder Woman. I will say I hope that doesn't happen. If they do the Justice Society movie, I really hope that they just keep it Justice Society, that there's not crossover with the different with like different modern with any of the modern superheroes, or there's not time travel or anything else like that. Um Namely because we already got a we already got a Wonder Woman that was steeped in the past. And if you really feel compelled to tell past stories with Wonder Woman, then just let it be let it be flashbacks, and just have her flashback to different periods of her life and all of that sort of stuff, and you're good to go. I just don't want to see a retread of a lot of the versions of the stories that we've already been told. The world is your oyster with these new characters, so let's actually do something different. Let's actually do something that colors outside of the standard lines that we've already seen done over and over again, especially when you're talking about DC. DC, again, has so much continuity to it. They have so many stories, they have so many characters, they have so many compelling characters that can go here, there, and everywhere. That's part of what made Marvel as successful as it was. It told a story. So let them tell so tell the stories, but without just going back to the same thing over and over again. We don't need historic Wonder Woman. We don't need the 87th Joker. We don't need yet another Death of Superman, or jumping right to Doomsday, or any of those kinds of things. Especially for Batman, because Batman has so many different characters around him. Especially if the rumors are to be believed that we're going to get middle aged Batman, that we're going to get a Batman that already is well within his tenure as the as a superhero, which I don't hate. Especially, I'm not the biggest Damian fan, but if that means we get Nightwing, and Nightwing is one of my favorites, and that means that we get a scene with a compelling Nightwing and David Cornsweet's Superman, then sign me up. I'm here for that. Those two. are you're talking about 1A and 1B of the conversation of the most hopeful characters in all of the DC universe. You know what I mean? So like, yeah. So I mean, there's so much meat on the bone. That's really what it comes down to is there's so much meat on the bone. And if you do it well, if you do it right, if you actually keep telling compelling stories, then again, even if you wanted to reboot the whole thing and 15 years from now we're talking about rebooting the timeline yet again, and then do Crisis and start with new number ones and go from there. You're literally talking about a continuity that renews itself every handful of years, so lean into that. You know what I mean? But for now, I think the DC universe is in good hands. I think the DC movie world is in good hands, and my hope is that um as fans we can just let him cook. Like, I know that there was a lot of controversy with Snyder Cut people and Snyder fans and this and that, but like, just let him cook. Sorry for spamming your chat, but Gunn has mentioned the possibility of DCU video games. Do you think this would be a good idea? And what characters do you think could potentially star in okay, so I'm of the vintage that I remember Superman 64, and the travesty that was that game. Um, hashtag justice for Superman in the video games. I would love to see a compelling a Superman story. We've proven that we can do it. We've proven that we can do immersive storytelling in the video game world. Um, but honestly, beyond just Superman, Flash. I want a Flash video game because it's built in. Just have him fight the rogues. Then you can keep it street level, or have you fight the rogues at one point, and really it's Reverse Flash that's behind everything. That's the ultimate big bad. Different things like that. There are tons of different stories that you can tell with the Flash, and it's a generally easy to illustrate skill set that you can do in the video games. I will say, I know he's saying that. I know Gunn is saying that everything counts. Everything's on the table. Everything counts. Um, don't you dare try to tell any kind of story that you would need to have for the movies in a video game. Inspired by? Absolutely. Inspired by whatever character and all that sort of jazz? Absolutely. I think that's a great, great addition to everything that we can get out of this new version of the DC universe. But I just think that's the road that you start to go down. There's a group of us in geek culture that are like, oh yeah, I'll just jump on YouTube. I'll just jump on YouTube and watch even if I don't play the game, I'll just jump on YouTube and look at the lore video that somebody's bound to put out. And I'll be all good to go. Um, your average everyday person who's just looking for a comic book movie, who's never picked up a comic, would not be inclined to do that. So I think we still need to cater to the average everyday person, um, more so than catering to us fans that would consume everything and anything because we're fans of the IP, because we're fans of the story. But yeah, I think I do not hold back on the fact that I think Ezra Miller was never a good Flash to begin with, let alone when they busted out backwards and started going buck wild and with literally a criminal and all of that jazz. Like, beyond all of that, I just don't think that they were ever compelling as Flash, let alone Barry Allen. Um, so that's really like, beyond the Trinity, beyond the big name ones, man, I really want a compelling Flash family. I really want a compelling Flash family that expands out from just Barry Allen. Like, yes, Barry Allen is my favorite, but I want I want the entire universe. I want Wally. I want I'll even take Bart and all of that jazz. I cried 3 times when he saved the squirrel, when he was with his parents on the farm, and at the end. This is everything I ever wanted and hoped from a Superman movie. Yes and amen. Like, yeah, yes and amen. Um, he healed the whole. He healed the whole Man of Steel and BBS off of my soul. Phenomenal. Yeah. I think people who think that. So here's my thing, right? Superman but evil is the most lowbrow story that you can tell. And there's a reason why I think that there's only, and I'm including versions of Superman but bad that are outside of the actual DC universe proper. Um, I think there's only 2 times that that story has ever been told halfway decently: Red Sun Superman and Injustice, because both of them told a story. They didn't just tell Superman but bad. And I just think that when you're talking about a Superman that kills, I just that's not that's a different character. At that point, it's a different character. Like, yes, that's kind of like saying Batman. Like, I understand that Batman held the gun when he was back in the golden age and all of that such. But like, what at what point then at that point you just have the Punisher. Just go read a Punisher comic. Like, if you want Batman but he kills, just go read a Punisher comic. That's all I'm saying. When you make a whole movie about Flash's mom's death and Reverse Flash is never alluded to once. I'm saying, and also, like, Flashpoint, and it's the first Flash movie, and you're doing Flashpoint. Are you serious? Like, come on. There is no that. I understand what they were trying to do with that being the reboot for the universe, but it was so haphazard and such nostalgia bait with Keaton coming back to play Batman and showing Nicolas Cage's Superman and all of that jazz. Like, it was a mess. And so hot take. I think the most compelling character, or the most compelling villain in all of the DC universe, is Eobard Thawne. I think he is. I think there's so much meat on the bone to tell with his story, and that's seconded by Hunter Zolomon, Wally's Reverse Flash. I think both of those characters are just brilliant additions to the mythos. That I think you. I think if you're going to do that story, Flash is one of the few that I would say, like, man, if you're not going to do Reverse Flash right out the get, like, if that's not going to be where you start that conversation with the Flash movie, then at the bare minimum, you have to have him, like, slide in at the end of the first movie. So if you're not going to do Reverse Flash in the first movie, then do the Rogues. Do the Rogues. He saves the day, all of that sort of stuff, and at the end of the movie, we get the introduction of Reverse Flash, and then Reverse Flash becomes kind of the overarching big bad for him going forward. But if you're going to tell any of the bigger stories that involve time travel, that involve paradoxes, that get as weird as Flash really is, then you have to have Reverse Flash. It doesn't make any sense for it. But, like, also in this universe, especially if I'm right about the Legion of Supervillains and all of that sort of stuff, I will take a live action Grodd. I will take a Gorilla Grodd in this universe, because that would be awesome. And this universe has already proven to be weird enough to handle A giant talking gorilla. I almost worked some work on the Batgirl movie in Scotland, but the demon. Oh, okay. Yeah, I the movie that never was the giant tax write off for Warner. Yeah, I so Batgirl is another one that's kind of like Supergirl. I'm aware of some of the stuff, but I just don't know as though I just don't know um like a whole lot about the character, and so I would be compelled if the actress was a good one. Now I'm kind of relieved because I don't know if I could handle my one contribution to DC being lost media. Yeah, it would make for a story though. It would certainly make for a story. Be like I had a hand in DC's lost media. Um, oh man, that's hilarious. But yeah, I think that this is a world, and they've already set the tone with soups that if that this is a world that can thrive off of a lot of the ancillary characters, that you don't just need to rush to get the seven together, you don't just need to rush to get the Trinity together, you don't just need to rush to get the big names out of the way. You can have each one of these characters introduce all of the side players that make up the larger context of the DC universe. You can bring in all of the side characters that make for the whole world that is the DC. Like DC is made up of a lot of legacy characters, a lot of generational characters, things like that. They tend to build out mantles and then have multiple people fill the mantle. You can do that with this world, and you stand more of a chance than it seems like Marvel is being able to get away with, because you tend to find one character synonymous with each one of those roles, where with DC they have slotted in multiple people to fill these different roles. I just don't want to see a Batman with Dick Grayson, Robin. That's really the only thing that I don't want when it comes to Batman. Everything else is fair game. I want to see Jason Todd. I want to see Tim Drake. I want to see the other Robins more than I want to see Dick Grayson as Robin. Also, if we don't get Dick Grayson as Robin, then that means that we're going to get Dick Grayson as Nightwing. And I don't want to see Teen Titans. I don't want to see a Titans movie. I just don't want to see, unless the only way that I would be cool with the Titans movie is if they make it the Titans and it's not they're not teens, that it's actually um Nightwing that's leading the group, rather than like the TV show Teen Titans, where it was Robin that was leading the group. um Man, this was fun, y'all. This was fun. I plan on doing these kinds of streams more, where we're talking about these different IPs. We did one about the philosophy of Star Trek and the philosophy of these different IPs in the past and things like that. But I will be coming and doing more of these types of streams in the future. But to get those to get access to these kinds of conversations, where they are specifically about geek culture stuff and about comic book stuff and all of that sort of jazz, you're going to want to go to Thoughts from a Bearded Geek on YouTube or on Twitch. Those are going to be the spots where a lot of the media stuff is going to be coming from, media centric stuff. Tori says Damien is confirmed for Brave and the Bold, which is still happening as far as I know. Um, I'll believe it when I see it. It's and the only reason why I say that is because originally Superman was supposed to be Superman Legacy, and James Gunn is known for right before they're about to like once they wrap on a movie, they sit back and ask what doesn't work, and in that case, it didn't work that that they it didn't work to call it Superman Legacy because this was starting off a brand new Superman and all of that sort of stuff. So they just went with Superman. Um, it seems like James Gunn is cares more about telling compelling stories, even if it means some of the stuff that he originally came out of the gate swinging with doesn't actually end up coming to fruition. That being said, he is a huge Damian Wayne fan. Um, I, Damian's fine. Damian's fine. I'm not the biggest Damian Wayne fan. Um, I just hope that it's not the version of Damian Wayne that's just petulant little child. I think it very much matters which version of Damian you're pulling for that one. I just think that there's other more compelling things to talk about as far as Batman goes. And when you're talking about Damian, you're talking about pigeonholing him to a very specific era. And if you're going to tell a Robin story, I just think that there's more compelling Robin stories to tell than Damien's. Though I will say, at least if they do Damien and they do Brave and the Bold, he's old enough to have a full grown Dick Grayson, and he's old enough to have had Jason Todd. So which means he's old enough to get Red Hood, and especially because we're already suggesting that Bizarro is a thing in this universe. So you do Bizarro, you get Bizarro out of the way. You don't kill him. Don't kill Bizarro. We don't need to kill our villains every single time they come about. That is like a lesson that they need to learn from Marvel and what not to do. Um, so don't kill Bizarro, but have him be all the Bizarro that we know him to be, and then introduce Red Hood, have Jason Todd, and then all you need is Artemis, and you've got the Outlaws. A live action Outlaws? Yes, absolutely. Phenomenal. Like that would be such a cool addition to the DC universe and an example of what I've been talking about of tell different stories. Tell new and different stories that are something outside of the norm, something outside the norm of what we've always gotten from the big screen. So, but like I said, card subject to change when it comes to Gunn, and that's ultimately a good thing because I'd rather him be flexible than try to shoehorn in exactly what he's trying to do. That's why in Superman, all we got was a nod and a reference to Gotham. Gotham exists. We know that Gotham exists, but there was no mention of Batman because there's no word yet on which version of Batman is going to be in this universe or who Batman is. So let's not shoehorn in something just because we need to have a compelling post credit scene. I think those post credit scenes were everything that they needed to be. With how Superman started off in the thick of things already, I think DCU Batman will definitely be starting out with a few ex Robins out there already, like a less sad Batfleck. I mean, at least Batfleck was jacked to the gills, man. Like he was. At least I will give Batfleck this. I'll give Batfleck this. For as much as I think um, Frank Miller is a man that needs to go away. Um, I and for as much as I think that his work was ultimately a net negative on the comic book industry. I think Batfleck was the first guy to bring to the live action a Frank Miller Batman. And with just his build, very top heavy, bulky, big, like raw boned sort of deal, tortured, sad, like weather worn, and all of that. He wore all of that very well. It's just unfortunate that it was in the midst of an incredibly ultimately half baked movie. Pretty movie. I will give the Snyder Cut its props. It was pretty, but it's just not the DCU. It was an Elseworld story, and unfortunately, though, they were trying to portray it as the definitive take on the on the DCU. Um, and thanks, I appreciate it. I'm glad that you enjoyed the stream, y'all. I was not expecting to go, an hour for. What are you dense? Um, So the problem with Frank Miller is that his ideas are interesting until they're not. When he first came out, he was it was a different take. And maybe part of it is mainly living in the aftermath of Frank Miller rather than really the specific heyday of Frank Miller. But I personally think that Frank Miller's best work was Watchmen. I think his best work was done when he was blatantly sap. Oh, I just thought you were a really big guy. You were a really big guy, Frank Miller fan. Um, I think his best work is done when he's satirizing, rather than trying to tell a whole and complete story. Um, because generally, when he tells whole and complete stories, he loses the rabbit on telling anything outside of just let's make this as dark and as gritty as absolutely possible. You know what I mean? So, all right, y'all. My this ear infection that I've got is beating me up. I'm starting to lose my voice here. I wasn't expecting to go in 15 minutes shy of 2 hours. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap it here. That's it. That's all. That's a wrap. Tori, thank you for all of your interjection or all of your engagement. For everybody else that has joined along the way, thank you. There has been a constant audience for this whole thing, and it's been a couple of weeks since we've gone live on a Tuesday night, and so I'm glad to be back doing it, especially talking about something that I love a lot and all of that. I will be back next Tuesday night. I will be live, 7 p.m. Eastern. I'll let you do the math from there. Until next time, I appreciate you all. Let me know what you want to hear me talk about next. That's always good. Go ahead and leave a comment. Like I said, hit us up over on Twitch, where you can find everybody within the KFM broadcasting family. But for now, that's it. That's all. That's a wrap.